I have been in a funky mood this week, and I know, I just put out a campaign book video, but I cannot stop thinking about this area of my world. And it's not even really fleshed out yet. I don't have a plan, I hardly have a structure, but I do have these very vivid visions that keep plaguing me, so I have to get it out somewhere. So here it is, with very little context and mostly vibes. Bon appetit! Usually I feel like when I'm plagued by a concept, it's a character design, or at the very least something that's within my normal drawing wheelhouse. Well, you know what's not in my wheelhouse? Drawing caves. I don't know how to draw caves, and do y'all want to make a wild guess what I'm drawing here today? That's right, a lovely forest scene. Just kidding, obviously it's a cave. So in my last video, I spent time talking about these plant creature guardians of the forest, which were all supposed to be very scary and intimidating, and you all found delightful and endearing and cute. It's okay. I also find them endearing. Now, of course, these creatures are not just guarding the forest, but they're also inadvertently keeping people out of two very magical and very secret cities, BRIMADOSA and Kirsaland. Like I said earlier, I don't have a lot fleshed out about either of those places. I just have these very nebulous concepts and images in my mind. But what I do know for sure is that in exchange for protection against losing any more of their land, they send magic artifacts and relics to the empire capital of Exenir. Is this thinly veiled discourse on a group of people being forced to pay rent to live on a land that belonged to them in the first place? Perhaps. The magic relics come in a couple of different forms. So in Kirsaland, the common practice is to use magic to bring relics into existence in like an art sort of sense. Either singing things into existence, enchanting things through intricate painting or carvings, weaving, things like that. In BRIMADOSA, things are more engineered. You have runes that are etched into gears and clockwork. You fuel items with magic that has been harnessed in ways like lightning rods, in a weird math concept that I've only ever heard me and my partner use as a metaphor. Kirsaland and BRIMADOSA have approached zero but from opposite ends. And I think that's very fitting, as in my experience, engineers and artists are often neighbors, if not just the same thing in different flavors. In BRIMADOSA specifically, there is a cave system or a chasm with maybe some portals to other planes. I haven't figured that out yet specifically, but there is magic ore, or maybe some old ancient relics, or possibly some magic items that are pulled through portals if the portals are there, and these are excavated and brought up to the surface to be examined, refined, restored, perfected, improved, or what have you by the engineers and artificers of BRIMADOSA. And in my mind, I just had this picture of rocks and giant artifacts being hoisted up with these huge chains to a higher level in the cavern system, and you know I had to just do my best and draw a little sample of it. Hey, meet the new Speeddraw Ice Rain contributor of my channel, Gradient Maps. I know I said in my last video that I'm not going to use gradient maps super often in my drawings, but here I am 2 videos in a row still using gradient maps. I do think they are especially good for landscapes and scenes, specifically those high contrast fantasy landscapes, and as someone who is fairly new to drawing landscapes, it's really incredibly easy for me to get bogged down in details and then start overworking areas, and that just undermines my entire composition. Using gradient maps nicely separates out steps so I can focus on things one at a time. I can work out my sketch and then use all my energy to solidify shapes and values, and then with a gradient map I can figure out the colors I actually want. And in Krita at least, and I'm sure with other drawing programs as well, it gives you the option to preview what a gradient map would look like before you apply it, and you get to mess around with the colors in this sort of limbo preview space, and that means that I don't have to immediately commit to anything, which is really nice. Not only does it give all that benefit, it also saved me a lot of time to do gradient maps. This speeddraw kind of feels like it's inching by because it took me maybe 2 hours to draw this piece, maybe 2.5. That's like half of the time of what a normal piece takes me, let alone a landscape. I was planning to draw another piece for this video just to make it go a little faster, either more of the mines or the surface of BRIMADOSA, but I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty tired and I've been fighting some mad art block. You know, which I think is really unfair. Like, I think it shouldn't be allowed that every fiber of my being wants to sit down and make art so badly, but at the same time, everything I make makes me want to turn myself inside out. And I hate that. I would love have to uninstall that program if that is possible. What do you mean that's inherently linked to me being an emotionally complex and multifaceted person? What is that? What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Anyways, I wish I had more lore to give you. I'll figure it out eventually. I'll put some flesh on this skeleton of an idea. Actually, it's less that I need to add to it and more that I need to carve it down and settle on some actual defined aspects. Walk with me while I spew out what it feels like inside my brain when I try to think about BRIMADOSA. So I do want various places in my campaign setting to link to different portals to different planes, maybe demi-planes, although there isn't a specific reason why it has to be BRIMADOSA with a portal, and these magic relics don't necessarily need to come out of a portal. Also, BRIMADOSA is my bloodpunk city, but I'm actually not positive if it's all strictly bloodpunk or if that's just the vibe that the place gives off. Obviously, this place is going to be a matriarchy. It's ruled by a queen, or maybe she calls herself a king, or maybe a lord, because gender roles are a social construct. But of course, as powerful as I want her to be, we also need to have the aspect of BRIMADOSA still being under the thumb of Karados and the Exenerian Empire as a whole. I also have a vague idea of what this woman is like. She is pretty much bound to the confines of her castle because of medical needs. Not positive what those medical needs are yet. We'll figure that out. Also, I do want the vibes to be bloodpunk, vampire, gothic, but I don't actually want her to be evil. She can be vengeful at best, but maybe not outright evil. I don't know. She does perpetuate the mining and sale of artifacts to the Empire, so does that make her a ruler operating under an oppressive system because she believes it's the only way they can survive? Or does she believe it's for the greater good? Or maybe she just feels stuck. Or maybe I never actually disclose that information and let people running a campaign in the setting decide her motives and whether or not she's a good person or a bad person. Or neither. Either way, the minings of the chasms do continue and probably put some sort of strain on the environment, to maybe the people or something. Although, who's to say that the mining is inherently a dangerous job at all? Although, I mean, it's gotta be, at least a little bit, right? First of all, imagine what a cool dungeon the Chasms of BRIMADOSA would make. And then second of all, imagine all the cool creatures that could live there, especially if there was a portal to another plane. Which loops us back around to the start. So there's a lot to whittle down and work out. And I think I'm just so strongly attached to the idea of BRIMADOSA that I'm afraid working on it will make me disappointed in what it turns out to actually be. Very topical to being a multifaceted and emotionally complex person. I think I just want this part of the world to be so cool and so beautiful, and I just don't feel like I have the artistic ability to draw everything I'm imagining, or I don't think I have the right amount of creative energy to make a unique environment for characters to run around in. Working on the campaign book and BRIMADOSA especially makes me have that feeling that you get when you know what a word means and you can use it correctly contextually, but you can't actually give a proper definition. Or like when you're a kid and you have these big artistic visions but not enough art experience or fine motor skills to get the image out of your head and onto paper. But also there is a big brain part of me that knows my art and writing will never be good enough for me, and it's just some big, oh silly girl, the circumstances will never be perfect and you simply have to do it in spite of the circumstances type energy. And in here, this final minute of the speed draw, you will see the most dramatic changes to this drawing that have occurred this entire speed draw. Carving out the details took the vast majority of time, but look, at the end I get to put all the little treats in, and it actually gives the biggest impact to the final result. I put in a color dodge layer to make the rim lighting on this magic rock thing look cooler. I use a multiply layer and add a purple blue fog coming from below, and also I accidentally deleted everything for a little bit and panicked for a hot second, and I adjust the curves to push my values. I even dabble just a little bit in the HSV sliders to get that red and orange a little brighter. But with that is the end of my first drawing for the area that will be known as BRIMADOSA. How fitting that my first BRIMADOSan piece, my cornerstone piece, if you will, is of a rock. Is it an important rock? Is the rock made out of something cool? Where does the rock come from, and why are they taking it out of the ground? Why is it bleeding gold and purple? All very good questions that I don't have the answer to yet. in the near future. Hopefully I manage to simply do it in spite of the circumstances, as I know I should. And hopefully you'll be hearing more about BRIMADOSA soon as well. Or, you know, I could just panic and make videos from the comfort of my comfort zone. Will I or won't I? That's just something we'll have to figure out together. So until then, who knows? Not me.